makes. Cory, would you be willing to start?
Difficult choices that a character makes. Well, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. The book that I've just finished the rewrites on, that'll be out next September, is all about kids who run away from home after ruining their families. It's without giving away too much of the plot. It's sort of set in a near future Britain where downloading too many movies can cost your family everything. And I've been thinking about it in the context of decision-making theory, which is a really exciting and strange bit of academic stuff. The traditional idea of how decisions work is the narrative idea that you come to a series of crossroads. Either you do or you don't. You get married, you don't get married, you decide to have steak for dinner, you decide not to have steak for dinner. But I'm reading this guy, Venkatesh Rao, who is an ex-Department of Defense guy who studies decision-making, and he says that our narratives drive our decisions, that we tell ourselves a story. So we say, I'm going to go to university someday. And every day, in a million ways, there are micro decisions that you make that are driven by that story more than by any particular weighing in the balance at any moment. So when I wrote this book that I've just finished, I spent a lot of time thinking about the stories the characters were telling themselves. And rather than trying to paint it as a series of yes-no cruxes or weighing in the balances, I tried to kind of make it all adhere to some internal logic about the story the characters were telling themselves. And it became a novel about what happens when two people have told themselves different stories that involve each other.
Yeah, that could lead to some confusion, I would think. All right, thank you, Gayle.
I think, one of the themes that came up in Ready Where She Went, and it's also something that comes up in the two books I'm working on now. Well, there's actually a scene in If I Stay where Mia's dad says to her, sometimes you make decisions in life and sometimes they make you, which is that sometimes you're making these choices and you don't even realize you're making them. And sometimes with Adam, he just, in this scene, makes this monumental choice unaware. But Where She Went picks up 3 years later, it's had this huge impact on his life, and he has to make a series of decisions in that book based upon something that he did 3 years earlier. So the books I'm working on right now, one of the characters, the male character, who is the second book, is his book. It's a duet of books again. It's somebody like that who sort of thinks that life is just a series of accidents, and you just allow them to happen. That's his sort of life philosophy. And so it's his whole thing is realizing that, yes, sometimes you have to open yourself up to the sort of serendipity of life, but if you're not the driver of your life, there's a problem. So it's finding another character whose life has been completely overplanned and discovers her sort of a bigger side of herself by letting go a little bit. So I think in these next two books, it's more about sometimes letting that sort of bigger mystery force decide for you, as opposed to trying to just push it forward, as opposed to knowing when you actually have to sort of seize control and say, no, I am going to get there if I have to push that damn boulder up the hill.
Sometimes it's much harder to let those things go.
Definitely.
I think it's an interesting question. I was trying to go through my books and think about the different choices the characters make, and I think one of the most difficult choices the young people in my literature make is the choice to become friends with someone, to choose who they're going to love, to choose who they're going to be friends with, against, for lack of a better way to say it, all odds. So in Locomotion, Lonnie decides to become friends with Clyde, the new boy, who's kind of this outcast in the classroom. And the other side, the relationship between Clover and Annie Paul is one that's a choice of friendship across race. And then Melanin's son, he makes this decision: do I embrace my mother's sexuality or do I not? So it's these choices that seem kind of like very everyday in a way, but are also very monumental for young people.
Yeah, even though they're choices about relationships, they end up defining the character in an important way. Okay, thank you. Among the three of you, your settings range from a Seattle ICU